Hello folks, the old sergeant here. Last night I was on the Marc's streaming, and he was going over the murderer in New Zealand's manifesto. Something that was obvious to try to create hatred and violence against peoples, Western civilizations all around the globe, and specifically in the United States. At what point did he think that going in and murdering 49 worshipers in a mosque is a good reflection and a good thing to do to aid Western civilization? What was he thinking? Western civilization and people that consider themselves part of Western civilization don't go in and murder the innocent. I don't care if they were Muslim. They weren't trying to kill you at that moment, were they? They were non-combatants. And in Western civilization, in this century, we work very hard to avoid killing innocent non-combatants. But he wanted to start a war in the United States. I've been talking about the American Cold Civil War for some time now. Lots of folks in the military have been talking about it for some time because we recognize the signs. Many of us have been fighting socialism since we were fighting the Soviet Union. A few since the Nazis, the National Socialists. And keep in mind, that's where Nazi comes from. National Socialists. Now look at this man's manifesto. He's against capitalism. All right. Well, if you're against capitalism, what are you for? Well, it became pretty obvious that he's a socialist. Every single time when we see violent shooters, first thing that happens is the media runs up and down trying to equate the shooter with some group like the Tea Party. They even go and announce it that, yes, apparently there's a man with that name who's connected with the Tea Party. Wasn't the same man. But they bend over backwards trying to blame conservatives, the patriots, the average man and woman in the Midwest. They do their damnedest to blame us for the violence when they're the ones doing it. It always turns out to be some crazy leftist, and then, it disappears from the media. Well, they got their gun control in, don't they? And sure enough, in this case, not even 24 hours later, the Prime Minister of New Zealand is out there talking about gun control. Now let's talk about gun control. If there were armed men and women in those two mosques, there wouldn't be 49 dead. The shooter would have been taken out rather rapidly. Why wasn't there armed people in those mosques? You see that happen in the United States, where people come in and start shooting up the churches or the synagogues. Why isn't there somebody there who is armed to protect those people? Frequently, there is, but you don't hear it in the news. You don't hear about a person with a gun defending folks and stopping a mass shooting. You don't hear about that. They keep that quiet. Finally, I see on the news where the right thing is happening in a lot of schools, where they are hiring veterans, especially combat vets, to defend their schools and their churches. And you know, to a veteran, especially a combat veteran, there is no greater job than to defend our children and our worshipers, be it in a church, synagogue, or mosque. This is Western civilization. We don't act that way. We have all the civilizations amongst us, and we're the only ones that can pull it off. But when you have the socialists decide that they are wanting power now, they'll do everything they can to create diversion, to have us fight one another. Everything they can to be able to take away our means of defense. That's what the Second Amendment is all about. It's not for deer hunting. It may not even be so much for personal defense. It is to protect us from our government when they want to impose a dictatorship on us. And we see that's exactly what the American government is trying to do now. At least one party of it. The party I call the Treason Party. The Socialists, the National Socialists, they're not even hiding who they are anymore. The other party is the spineless party that don't stand up for their own views or for the people that they're supposed to represent. Now here we have a party that have decided that it's better to be anti-Semite and keep voters than to have any principles whatsoever. Are we going to see more violence around the various countries in Western civilization, especially the United States? Yes, we are. And it's going to get worse. And the cold Civil War is going to heat up. First, with minor clashes, like in Portland, minor incidences where some leftists, some Antifa, go and attack some person on the street if they even suspect them of being a conservative. And it seems not to matter to them what race that conservative is. They'll hurl the racial slurs. That's who the left is in this country. That's who that man was. That murderer in New Zealand. We have to stand up and say enough now. We can't have the government of Portland turning Marxist. I just saw that a whole bunch of police officers did the right thing and resigned because the government was standing with Antifa as Antifa is attacking citizens in the street. And boy, if the Proud Boys come along and try to stop it, guess who gets arrested? Like we saw in New York. Guess who gets the jail terms? But we have to stop this violence now, or it is going to escalate. The cold Civil War will turn hot. And of course, it's not going to be lines of people standing, facing each other, and starting firing their guns, like in the Civil War. No, this is going to be hit and run attacks. This is going to be people looking at voter rolls to see who is a Republican, who is a conservative, raiding their houses and injuring or killing them. It's going to be individual. It's going to be one-on-one. And it's going to be very nasty. Because you already have the tech people picking a side, They're going to deplatform people. They're going to deperson people. And they're going to do it to such an extent that they'll cut off your credit card so you can't even pay your bills. They'll cut off your bank account so no money can be transferred to you. They'll put pressure on your employer to fire you. Why? Because you're a conservative. And you have strong Western values. And you revere the country. And you don't want it to turn socialist. But the tech companies seem to have all this massive control. The banks have all this massive control. And they keep pushing, and they keep pushing, and they keep pushing. And the patriots, the conservatives, many of us old vets, sit there and look at it and think, how do we fix this without violence? How do we prevent people from going in and shooting up churches and synagogues and mosques? We know what violence is. Very aware of what it does to people, to their civilization. And we're desperate to stop it. So please, pray to whomever you pray to, that God will look favorably on the United States, on our civilization, and prevent its collapse. Help us find a way to keep this from escalating into a hot civil war, to the destruction of the United States, to its being turned into a socialist government and turning us into Venezuela, with people dying and starving in the streets as black-suited thugs run around and kill people who dare to speak up for want of food. This is the old sergeant. Stay prayerful and stay vigilant.